All right, did this work? Am I with you? Tell me this worked. I'm struggling. I think I figured out what happened, but hopefully this is going to work. And now I'm live with you. Let's see. It's given me a second to try to connect. Hopefully that's working. Let's find out. I'm just waiting for my face to appear. It says I'm live. Let's see. Oh, there it is. Finally. Oh my goodness. I hear myself. So does that mean you're all seeing me? Okay, you see me. Okay, thank you. All right, thank you for being so patient with me. I was trying to figure out why it wouldn't let me schedule the live stream in advance, and I thought I figured that out, and then what I did is I apparently duplicated the live stream, and so then it wouldn't let me go live because I had duplicated it. So there we go. So now hopefully all is good and we are there together, although for some reason on my computer it's not showing me. All right, hopefully. Oh, there we go. All right, finally. Whew. Thank you guys for being so patient with me. Boy, every time you set up something new, there's a challenge. Okay, but the good news is we're here. Yay! And I'm super excited to talk about this topic. I worked so hard on it, and we've got so many of you here. This is fantastic. Thank you for being so patient with me. All right, here we go. Well, let's get into it. We are here to do another You Be the Behavior Consultant. We're going to talk about this paper that Annette and I worked on for quite a while. And yeah, really excited to share it with you. So if you haven't been with us before, this is You Be the Behavior Consultant. How it works, we have a topic to talk about. I've got some questions to prompt your discussion. I hope you will chat with us a little bit this time. I do have some interesting video examples, and I think we've got some folks here. Hopefully Bob and Alex are here. I think Alex especially has inspired this one a little bit. And of course, we'll recap it all at the end. So what are we going to talk about this time? We're going to talk about the paper that Annette and I just had published on the constructional approach. And hopefully some of you had a chance to read it. Even if you haven't, that's okay. Hopefully this will get you thinking about it and get you inspired to read it. And it is a free open access publication. You can scan that QR code there if you haven't downloaded it yet and get access to it. And I'll share that QR code at the end as well. Anyway, so my questions for you is, have you even read it yet? It's a long paper. I know it might take you a little bit of time, but I'm going to share some ways to engage with it later on in the presentation that may make it a little bit easier to engage with it and maybe make it kind of fun to engage with it, which I'll share with you. Let's see what else. And if you did engage with it, let us know if it sounded familiar to you, or if maybe there were some things that are kind of new to you that are interesting, and maybe some of the information's been helpful to you. I'd love to hear. I'm sure Annette would too. Would love to hear if the information's been helpful to you, and how do you think you might use this resource moving forward in your own work or in discussions you may be having with others, or if you're instructing others. Maybe you are somebody who is a consultant or you're a teacher, and maybe even shaping policy. Maybe you're involved with trade organizations. So yeah. Oh, Alex is here. Cool. Thanks. I'm glad to hear that. Okay. So let's get into some of the things about this paper that I think would be fun for us to share with you. So first of all, why this paper and why now? Why did we decide to do this? Because it's really been a bit of a journey. So first of all, the publication is called Animals, and the reason we decided to go for it now is they had a special issue that came out, or that they're putting together right now, that is targeted towards the zoo community, which, as you guys know, Annette and I are quite involved in that community. And the special issue has to do with best practices for zoo animal welfare. And so we really thought that was a nice fit for this particular topic. We also thought that it would be nice to put together something that was perhaps maybe sort of a condensed and streamlined resource that combined a few things that would put together some of the academic material, put together some of the things that people have been working on in terms of empirical studies, but also the case studies, the relatable stuff that people could look at as maybe a teaching resource, something they could share, something they could build upon, and sort of put them all together in one place. And even though it is a bit of a longer paper, I still think it's kind of streamlined and condenses things down a little bit so that hopefully it's accessible and kind of an easy to use resource. And I also think that right now our community is in an interesting place. I think for a while, we've kind of relied upon some particular resources and information and procedures that haven't quite met our needs. And so I think we're really at a place where we need these evidence-based alternatives to those traditional models. And so I think that is what one of the things that's been really driving us. And, we've had all these, people giving presentations at conferences, or the courses that I provide in my programs, or people having discussions. But it's nice to maybe have a resource that you can say, here, this has been in a journal, and maybe you can share this with others to say this is a direction we're going. And Bob says it's nice to have a paper to share with colleagues that's clearly and accurately discusses the constructional approach specifically with animals. Oh, so that's a good point. Something that is targeted towards the animal community as well, because I think one of the things we all do is we compare what's being applied across different learners, and we sort of have to make that fit for our models and our contexts. But what we were trying to do is hopefully target that towards our communities a little bit more precisely. So some more things. This is a review. There's different types of papers out there, and what we wrote was a review. And this is the definition that I took from animals as to what a review is. And a review provides a concise and precise update on the latest progress made in a given area of research. And typically these are comprehensive and submitted by authors who are active in the field. And I think that kind of describes pretty accurately what we tried to accomplish there. And of course, we're trying to reach more people, and I think journal articles can do that potentially. They have some avenues and methodology of doing that in a way that perhaps, all of our good efforts don't always have the ability to do. And of course, obviously, an important part of that is we're trying to benefit animal welfare, and exactly that is the title of that particular special issue. And again, another really important part of this, which I think we've been doing in bits and pieces, is we're trying to connect the history, the science, the empirical studies, and the casework all together in one place to show this evolution of what's been going on and hopefully where it's headed. And of course, another really important part of this is that I think we're at a place where we're really ready to expand even more upon what's already been accomplished. And hopefully this kind of provides a really nice foundation by putting all that sort of together in one place. Now, of course, it's not everything, because there's only so much you can do in a paper, but trying to collect a lot of that in one place so that people can say, oh, okay, here's all that information. Now, what can I do with it as a person working in this industry or in this field? Why did we do it? Why are we, two of those people that thought, let's put this down on paper? I think between Annetta and I, in terms of people working on this information and applying it, for us, we've been really studying and applying it for the last 8 years, specifically in zoo environments. So I wrote this kind of nicely saying that we've been practicing, learning, discussing, and refining. But to be quite honest, I think the best way of saying it is we've been making a lot of mistakes for the last 8 years. and catching all those mistakes and analyzing our own mistakes and kind of saying, okay, well, this we could do better. And I think we've been pretty honest with you all. We've been sharing sharing all those mistakes with you in these discussions that we have, and showing where, you know, oh, I could do that better, and continually refining. And so I think we're at a pretty good place where maybe we could talk about, you know, where we're at and what we think are you know, kind of some good practices at this stage. Now, that's not to mean that, you know, to say that we're not continually growing. I think we definitely are. And we've also been practicing disseminating this information at conferences, on these various educational platforms, at trade organizations, in a lot of workshops. So, you know, and as you guys know, anybody who, you know, teaches, these are really good opportunities to get your fluency in talking about these topics and finding better ways to say it over and over again. So hopefully it's better understood, better received. You know, you get better at describing these things a little bit better. And we've also been very fortunate to host events featuring the people who really are the experts on the topics. And so we learn from them, and they help us refine our information as well. So I think we are feeling more comfortable with our depth of experience, especially within the zoo community, and also our ability to discuss the topic and its application, at least within our community. You know, I'm not going to certainly say that I'm an expert in other communities. You know, we've got some folks here that work in other animal communities that I think could speak on it much better in those communities. But I feel comfortable talking about its application in the zoo world. And as you guys know, and some of you as well, you have access to these really fantastic mentors who guide us on our learning journey. And, you know, we were also fortunate to have their input in looking over our paper. And then I do think, you know, the folks that reviewed our paper gave us good suggestions to improve upon it. So if some of you looked at the preprint, we did make edits since the preprint. So I think that those edits enhanced our paper and improved upon it. So we appreciated what the reviewers suggested. I think it made it a better piece. We also recognize that this is a journey. It's not a destination. So what may be written in this paper today may not stand, you know, in 15, 20 years. There may be revisions to this and improvements upon this. So we are definitely looking forward to growth and improvements and things that we hope will continue to become better and better and better. But we just kind of felt like it's a good time to put out what we know so far, because I think it's a good leaping off point. You know, it's like let's continue to grow from this. So that's kind of why we felt like, you know, the timing is right, and we're two people that are in a good position probably to talk about what's happening in the zoo community. And certainly those of you that are you know, heavily involved in some other communities, I highly encourage the same if you're inclined. I'm sure there's an audience out there that would appreciate what you could share in your insights. So who do we think might enjoy this paper? Certainly if you're an animal caregiver and you are working with animals, we hope that you would appreciate this. Obviously, the examples we have provided are pretty targeted towards the zoo community, but again, I imagine you would find overlap with other species as well. Let's see, just looking at the comments. And then if you are somebody who just is interested in learning about the constructional approach, who may not necessarily be in the field working with animals, I think there are some useful components to this paper to anybody who's interested. So one of the things we did at the top of the paper is we tried to provide some definitions of terminology that I think are hopefully pretty straightforward, and I think they're kind of nice to get to know in general. I also think some of our explanations of some of the key components, the key features of the constructional approach, I think they're hopefully they're useful explanations, or at least useful introductions if you're not familiar with the constructional approach. And if you are, I think we tried to condense them and make them relatively accessible. So again, if you're somebody who's trying to, you know, get more comfortable with some of these principles, that I think you might appreciate them. And then, of course, we have lots of examples, lots of case studies trying to help illustrate the application of these principles to, again, facilitate understanding of how all this works in real life. And so, again, if you're a colleague who's saying, I'm ready for the next thing, what's next in animal training, and you're looking to seek more professional development and progression, I think that's another thing that this paper offers. And also, if you're somebody that's been running into roadblocks, like you've got some challenges that you just haven't been able to resolve, I think you may find that some of the things within the constructional approach are really super helpful in getting past some of those behavior challenges, whether it's solving a problem or reaching a behavior goal that you just feel like I'm not getting there and I can't understand why. You may have some pretty amazing aha moments when you get familiar with the constructional approach. So other folks that we would love to have get into this particular paper are people who are actually looking to do research. Because remember, we said this paper is a review, so it's not really a research paper. So one of the things that is pointed out in this paper is that the empirical studies were mostly done via the University of Texas, and a lot of the studies were done with domestic species. So it'd be really cool to see some more research done using some of the information that is discussed in this paper. So it'd be great to have folks that are interested in doing research and producing more empirical studies and testing some of the things that are discussed in the constructional approach. And then I think it would be great to have more instructors talking about this information. So whether you're a teacher, a consultant, an academic, a mentor, a behavior manager, anybody who's looking to expand their knowledge, their curriculum, their content, there is a lot of stuff in there that all of these little sections could be expanded into content that would be great to teach others about. And then again, a thing that's I think is really significant in our community is policy. As we continue to expand what our field is doing to improve animal training and welfare, I do think we really need to be looking at what kind of policy trade organizations are suggesting, whether they're guidelines or position statements or whatever resources trade organizations are putting forth. I think this is a kind of a resource that they should be looking at, considering it as a reference or a tool to help guide what they are putting forth in their policies. So I think it has a lot of potential, in my opinion. Okay, so breaking this down a little bit more, what are some of the things we did talk about? So like I said, we did get into definitions, some commonly used terms when we are talking about constructional principles. So like, for example, the word occasion is typically used. And so, here's the definition that's in our paper. Occasioning conditions refer to the specific environmental or contextual variables present just prior to the behavior's emission, which consistently signal the availability of reinforcement. And this is something I tend to talk about a lot when I'm teaching or talking to my clients, and the word antecedent comes up, because I like making this distinction for people and trying to transition the community to this terminology, because not all antecedents occasion behavior, but those that reliably do are considered occasioning stimuli or stimulus conditions. And I love that, because I love pointing out to people that, the public out there around the enclosure are antecedents, but they may have nothing to do with the behavior. And I think that is always very enlightening for people. And so it's little things like that little shifts in our world that can help us advance in ways that I think are really interesting. And of course, you could go deeper and deeper into that. And then of course we cover the history, and we also talk about how the constructional approach expands upon what we know and what are those key improvements. Because I think some of the pushback on this information has been that it's just a trend or a fad, or we already do that. So I think that was something really important for us to touch upon. We talk about the 5 critical elements, about building behavior versus eliminating behavior. We talk about nonlinear contingency analysis, using reinforcement based on function, why it's just not always positive reinforcement, why we want to honor distance as a reinforcer when the animal is seeking that as an outcome. What are degrees of freedom? What is genuine choice? Why walking away and getting nothing isn't really a choice? What is assent in that? How do we define assent? Emotions as contingency descriptors. And then, and again, those are all sort of put into sort of condensed descriptions, so hopefully a little bit accessible and digestible. And then we talk about the real-world application of all of this and the impact. And again, we do have a section on the empirical studies that have been done, but encourage there to be more. And then I think what's really helpful in this paper is that there's 14 documented relatable case studies. And the reason I say documented is that we know there's a lot more case studies out there, but the case studies that we put in this paper are the ones that Annetta and I have actually done either papers or presentations on, mostly at trade organization events. And so that's why we've included them in this particular paper. And so yes, you guys may have seen a lot more examples in, things like these live streams, but that's not what we included in here. We tried to include things that we can say, this was presented at ABAI, or this was presented at IAZA's annual conference, or this was presented at the IAZA animal training seminar or welfare forum. So everything here is documented, and that's why those are the specific examples that are included. And again, we tried to include case studies that we think people could relate to, because we know these are situations that are encountered at facilities all around the world. And we also did include examples that are sort of international. So we do have case studies from all parts of the world. And hopefully those help. And we tied them to those different principles that I talked about on the previous page, so that people can see how the principles are applied in these case studies and how they produce rapid behavior change and how they might be different from some of the traditional approaches that have been taken in the past that weren't really producing results or results at all, or long-lasting results, or measurable results, or effective or rapid results. So hopefully that has an impact for people. We also really connect compassion to the constructional approach, because again, it's not just about getting results, but it's about getting results that I think honor what the animal's seeking, but also improve animal welfare. And then we also talk about how does a real person out there doing their job get started? How can they even consider implementing these things? Obviously the real world benefits, and then future directions, meaning that we understand that what we're sharing today is just a little bit, and that there's so much more to be done, and that future directions would benefit from empirical studies in this context. So we realize that what we're just sharing is just scratching the surface at this stage. And again, some things that we think stand out about this is the easy to understand terminology definitions up front, some short, easy to digest descriptions of the key features, and hopefully those relatable case studies to help bring the science to life. And some other things that I did want to point out is that we did select references, resources, and case studies very carefully. Many of you are familiar with the peer-reviewed publications that we selected, because they're pretty seminal in terms of the history of the constructional approach and some of the more recent publications that have been coming out. I think those of you that follow the constructional approach, you're pretty familiar with them, and we feel really very confident on them. The unpublished academic work has to do with the empirical studies that came out of UNT. A lot of those were from master's thesis work, but we feel that they're important to include. And then, of course, the extensive applied experience has to do with those case studies that were presented at conferences that, again, we feel they have value, and we don't feel that they should be disregarded, even if they weren't in a journal, so to speak. But we do think what they do is they highlight the intersection of that, the history, the empirical foundations, and the hands-on success. And so that's why we felt, these were a good set of references and resources to put together. And again, the relatable documented case studies, I think, are really important for our community to at least connect with the material, so that hopefully, we get people going being interested in this material and wanting to apply it. So speaking of that, this is where I think of Alex and how we're going to engage a little bit here. And so this is where we get to have some fun. So I know this is a very busy slide, but we're going to look at a lot of videos here. So this is where I'm going to talk about how we might get into engaging with this content. So as some of you who have looked at this paper already, you may have seen it's a long paper. It is 29 pages. So obviously you can read it and pace yourself, because it is a bit of a long paper. But I wanted to talk about some different ways that you can potentially engage with it that might make it a little bit easier for you and potentially have some fun with it. So I've mentioned in the past to people that one of the ways that I like to engage with papers is I do like to have them read to me. Now, if it's a Word document, Word will read it to you in a nice, pleasant voice. Because this is a PDF, if you have a PDF reader that will read to you, like Adobe will, but there are other options. Sometimes having paid visual. We're going to talk about the audio overview. That's what we're going to talk about, Bob. Bob and Alex, I guess you both inspire me on this. So Kindle will read to you, and I'm going to show you a little. I think this video doesn't have any audio, so I can talk over it. Or it might have some audio kick in, but I can stop talking when that happens. So on Kindle, you can import a file and a local PDF file, and then start talk to text.
3,221 of 29 applicable across other professional managed care settings that house animals for conservation, education, research, or welfare purposes, including aquariums, sanctuaries, and rehabilitation centers.
So you can see it doesn't have a very pleasant talking voice. It's very robotic, but it will read to you. And you can highlight sections and make notes. And so it does do a few fun things. So it's not too bad. If you are and you can search keywords and bring you ahead to key sections if you want. So that's one option. Okay. And then there's another online reader right here that I've got listed that I've used before too. And again, kind of a robotic voice, but it's free, and you just upload the paper to that and it'll read you the paper. It doesn't have as many fancy features unless you pay for stuff. But the one that I want to talk about, which I know Alex and Bob like a lot, is Notebook LM. And in the past I've been a little bit less engaged with it, and so I have to give them both a shout out, because they both have been like, use it, and I've been like, it always takes me a while to warm up to different AI, but I played around with it a lot more this time. And so I'm going to show you some of the things that, if you haven't played around with it, that you might like. So let's look at, I'm going to show you so I did they have an audio overview, and again, this really condenses things down. So I still encourage you to read the paper because you'll get more out of it. The audio overview is 18 minutes. I'm not going to play you the whole audio overview, but I'll give you a little snippet of what the audio overview sounds like.
Welcome back to the Deep Dive. Today we're looking at something really fascinating, a big shift happening in how modern zoos and aquariums think about animal care.
It really is a huge shift. Animal welfare isn't just, a nice to have anymore. It's absolutely essential. It's the cornerstone.
Right, the cornerstone. Yeah. And that means old ways of doing things just don't cut it. You need practices that are actually based on evidence.
Exactly. And that brings us to the constructional approach, or CA. It's this emerging evidence-based method for animal training.
And it sounds like it's more than just training tricks. It's about fundamentally changing how animals experience their care, right? Giving them more agency.
Precisely. It's rooted in some pretty advanced behavioral science, but the outcome, the goal, is really compassionate. It moves away from just trying to stop problem behaviors.
The old reduction-based idea.
Yeah, that one. Instead, CA is all about actively building the behaviors you want to see, focusing on the animal's control and, well, its emotional well-being.
So our mission today for you listening is to really unpack CA. We want to show you the core ideas, how it's different, and look at the science behind it, which can be pretty surprising sometimes.
And explore how it leads to behavior change that's not just fast, but also lasts and feels, well, more ethical, more humane.
Okay, so let's start with that big philosophical shift you mentioned. Building competence, not just fixing problems.
Right. Traditionally, if an animal showed, say, aggression or repetitive pacing, the focus was almost entirely pathological. The thinking was, this animal is behaving incorrectly, it's maladaptive, we need to stop it.
So the question was always, how do we get rid of this?
Exactly. The constructional approach just flips that on its head. It asks something different. It asks what skill, what behavior is missing right now.
Missing?
Yeah. What behavior is missing that, if the animal had it, would make this so-called problem behavior completely unnecessary?
Ah, okay. That's a huge reframe.
Yeah.
So those challenging behaviors, pacing, fear, whatever, they aren't seen as flaws.
No, not at all. CA sees them as what the sources call competent operants.
Welcome back to the Deep Dive. Today we're looking at something really fascinating, a big shift happening in how...
Okay. And Anetta says, I love Notebook LM. Just watch out. It's not always 100% accurate, but very close to. Yes, I would agree with that. So now what we're going to look at in Notebook LM is the chat. And I believe I'm going to be able to talk over this one because there's no audio on that as well. And actually, I should mention how it works. So with Notebook LM, you don't have to pay for it. You just go to Notebook LM. It's a Google product, and you'll see on the page, try Notebook LM, and if you just go to try that and then go to create new, you upload the paper, and then you'll see on the page, you'll see this graphic that I have on the right here where it says audio overview, video overview, mind map, reports, flashcards, quiz. This is essentially what I'm showing you. I'm showing you these things. So we just looked at the audio overview, and now I'm going to show you the chat. So with the chat, and I should be able to talk over this, this is actually really fun if you get into it. So here, like, it has some prompts of some things it could ask it. And so it asked this question, and it gave its response to that, which is basically pulling from the paper, right? But you can also ask your own questions, and you can copy that answer, and you can give it a thumbs up or a thumbs down on that response. But then I put some questions in there, right? So I'm asking it about, what does it think about, I'm going to make this a little bigger for me. What does it think about, this framework compared to like systematic desensitization and counter conditioning? And I really liked the answer it gave. I thought it gave a really accurate response. It gave lots of details. And then it also will, if you click on these numbers here, it'll give you, connect you to the paper. So then you can go read more specifically in the paper about what the paper says specifically. So it's kind of giving you a little summary here, which is really nice. And then, again, you can say that was a good answer or a bad answer. And then I asked it another question here about hierarchical frameworks. What's, how is it different, or how's the constructional approach an improvement on that? And again, I thought it gave a really good answer. And then what was really fun, which I don't have in this video clip, is that I started to get really snarky with it. I started to play devil's advocate, and I really challenged it and started saying, no, I don't think the constructional approach is an improvement at all. And I started saying all the things that were sort of saying how it's wrong, how it's old school, how it's just a trend, how it's just a fad. And I was really impressed with the responses. It gave really good responses. So I think one of the things that, I think is kind of a valuable thing to do is to challenge it. Go ahead and be the person on the other side. Be the person that says, I question this content. And I think it's really interesting because, even as the person that, is one of the authors, I was really interested to see, well, how would you defend this paper? And it gave some really great answers. And it's also helpful as, if you're the author, you could see how might you want to defend, how might you want to defend your position when somebody challenges this content. But it gave really good answers. So it was quite interesting. All right, and so now I am gonna play a longer video for you, but this is the video overview. So you'll see here the little green thing on the right there says video overview. So this is their video overview of the paper that Notebook LM generated. It is a longer video. In my opinion, I thought it wasn't bad, but it's very, very condensed, and it's very, very simplified. I think the paper is far more in depth than that. So if you were to use the video and say, yeah, that's what the paper's about, I'd say you're missing out. So it's not that the video's bad. I mean, it has decent content, but it's not the full picture. So sit back, enjoy the video, but I would definitely say still read the paper, or at least get more engaged with it. Oh, and Alex says they added a debate feature for the audio overview where the two hosts will argue alternative points of view, but that may be a paid version feature. Oh, okay. Yeah, I haven't seen that. But I don't have the paid version feature. So that's a good point. Thanks for sharing that, Alex. Yeah, I love doing my back and forth with the chat, where I was just like, oh no, this is, I don't believe you, I still think it's bogus, or, I didn't say it quite like that, but I definitely challenged it, and it gave me really good answers. Okay, so here's the overview video. It's a bit longer, but it's entertaining. And again, this was AI generated based on the paper that I uploaded.
So what if I told you that the best way to fix a problem behavior in an animal isn't to stop it at all, but to build something entirely new in its place? That's the revolutionary and honestly game-changing idea we're diving into today. A compassionate, science-backed approach that's flipping the script on animal training. Let's start with a scenario we can all probably picture, right? You see an animal, and it's obviously scared. Maybe it's acting aggressively. Our first gut instinct is to make it stop. But is that really the best way to help? Is that even the right goal? For the longest time, animal training has been all about one thing: getting rid of the bad behavior. We see something we don't like, and our goal is to eliminate it.
Yep.
But this newer constructional approach asks a totally different question. Instead of asking, how do I stop this, it asks, what can I build in its place? Now, that might sound like a tiny little change in wording, but believe me, that one shift in perspective is the key to absolutely everything. Okay, so before we get to the whole build part, let's talk about the break part. Why does our natural instinct to just make a problem stop so often backfire or just not work? You've seen this a million times. An animal is terrified of something, so we try to distract it. We whip out the tastiest treat we have, trying to bribe it into feeling better. We're basically trying to paper over the fear with a reward. We're layering a positive thing on top of a really negative one, just hoping the positive one wins. And there's a scientific name for this. It's called superimposition. You're literally layering one consequence, the treat, on top of the real one, which, for the animal, is this overwhelming need to get away. The thing is, you haven't actually solved the root problem. You've just slapped a bandage on it. And the second that bandage, that treat, is gone, the fear just comes roaring right back. And this brings us to the absolute core of the constructional approach. It's a true paradigm shift developed by a brilliant behavioral scientist named Israel Gold-Diamond, and it really asks us to stop trying to break behaviors and instead start building new ones. Now this is where the idea gets incredibly powerful. Gold-Diamond's big insight was to completely reframe how we look at problem behaviors. That thing we see as a problem, the growling, the panic, it's not a bug, it's not a malfunction. He called it a competent operant. In other words, it's a perfectly logical and effective strategy the animal is using to get a result it desperately needs. It's working for them. And this just nails the new question we should be asking. It's not how do we stop the growling anymore. It's what calm behavior is missing that we could teach, which would also achieve the same goal of making the scary thing go away. See the difference? We're not taking away their only tool. We're giving them a much better one. Okay, so how does this all work in practice? Well, the science behind it really comes down to one of the most powerful forces in behavior you can imagine, the power of genuine choice. The key scientific concept here is called degrees of freedom. Now I know it might sound a little complicated, but the idea itself is actually super simple. It's just a way to measure how much real choice an animal has by counting the number of different ways it can get what it wants, what scientists call the critical consequence. So think about it like this. If there's only one way to get a treat or to escape something scary, just a single path, then the animal has 0 degrees of freedom. And that is not choice. That's coercion. Even if you're using treats, it's still basically a trap. But the moment you add a second path, just one more behavior the animal can use to get that same result, you create 1 degree of freedom. You create genuine choice. Suddenly, the animal has some agency. It can control its own world in more than one way. And that, my friends, changes the entire dynamic. This approach also gives us a much more practical way to think about emotions. Instead of them being these mysterious internal feelings, emotions just become descriptions of what the animal is trying to do. Fear? That just means I need to get away from that. Aggression? I need to make that thing go away. Interest? I want to get closer. It's so beautifully simple and, more importantly, it's something we can actually work with. Okay, so the theory is really compelling, but what happens when you put it into practice in the real world? Well, let's look at some absolutely incredible transformations with zoo animals. First up, there was a tiger at the Copenhagen Zoo that was really aggressive toward one specific keeper. The old school method of offering food just wasn't working because, as they figured out, what the tiger really wanted wasn't a snack, it was space. So they flipped the script. They started reinforcing calm behaviors by having the keeper step back. They gave the tiger exactly what it wanted. And the result? In just 8 sessions, the tiger went from growling to making friendly chuffing sounds. Incredible. Okay, next, check this out. A gorilla who was absolutely terrified of a closing door. Again, food didn't work. The critical thing for the gorilla wasn't a treat. It was control over that scary door. So the new approach was genius in its simplicity. When the gorilla was calm, the door stayed open. The gorilla learned its own calm behavior gave it control. The result? A problem that had been going on for a long, long time was solved in a single session. 1. And one more, just to show you this isn't a fluke. A camel, terrified of a weigh scale. Carrots weren't cutting it because her desire to escape was just way stronger. So the constructional solution was so clever, they reinforced a calm step towards the scale by then letting her move away from it. They used her own fear as the reward for being brave. The problem was solved in 1 session. She went from total panic to calmly standing on the scale. I mean, these examples just go to show that this isn't just a different technique. It's a profoundly more compassionate and, honestly, a much more effective way of interacting with animals. The benefits here are just huge. Of course, it improves animal welfare, but it also creates lasting change because you're solving the root problem. It's incredibly efficient, as you saw, and it makes things so much safer for everyone. But I think most importantly, it rebuilds the entire relationship on a foundation of real choice and trust. Ultimately, what this is all about is a fundamental shift away from demanding compliance to fostering actual communication. The animal isn't just a subject following orders anymore. It becomes an active, willing partner in its own care. And that strengthens the bond between human and animal in a way that just forcing them to do things never, ever could.
And this really leaves us with a fascinating final thought, doesn't it? If this compassionate science of building, not breaking, can so profoundly transform our relationships with other species, just imagine what else it could change.
So
there you go. Kind of cool. So again, a little bit longer, but pretty cool. And let's see. Another feature I do want to show you. Let's see. Annetta says, I'm overwhelmed sitting here with my mouth open. AI is great. Yeah, it's pretty cool. It was pretty good. But again, like I said, that's condensed. There's a lot more to the paper. So another feature that I did want to show you that I think is pretty cool is, and again, these are all just different ways to engage. So, just depend on what appeals to you. And again, you can do all of them. But the other one is this mind map, which I think is pretty awesome. So it's kind of like an outline, right? And so you can click on all these different components and they expand and they just keep expanding, right? And so it's almost like this expanding outline of our paper. And you can click on each of these elements and then it will take you to sections of the paper, right? So like if you want to click on, I think I do it at one point where I click on one of the sections and it takes you to that part of the paper. But I just wanted to show you how that works. Like, I think I will do that in just a moment here. Where is it? Right there. Yeah, so then it takes you to a section of the paper if you want to read more about that topic. So again, there's just, more ways to engage with it, which I think is just fun and interesting. So, yeah, fun stuff there. Yeah, especially for like such a long paper. I think that's one of the nice things about some of these things, is like you can say, okay, I want to read more about, that case study, or I want the key distinguishing features. I want to just get right into degrees of freedom. I mean, yeah, you can search for keywords and things like that, but this kind of helps break it down a little bit. And then they do have, if you want to kind of test your knowledge, they have quizzes and flashcards, but I'll just show you the flashcards pretty quickly. So the flashcards, I found that it works better if you really expand your screen. So again, there's kind of the front side of the flashcard, give you a moment to think about it. You click on it, and then the flashcard flips over, and you get the answer, and you can move on to the next one. So that's pretty fun, right? So Annetta said it gives you more ways to enjoy it again and again. Yeah, I think it's just I think the value of it all is it helps you engage with it in different ways that might be better for where you are at that time in your journey. So I think that's kind of some of the value in it all. So yeah, because sometimes reading a 29-page paper is not where you're at on that day. And then sometimes you might be like, I really got this stuff. I'm ready for someone to test my knowledge. And then as you can see here, after if you are saying I need more information on that particular flashcard, you can click on it and get more information on that particular topic. So I think that's pretty cool too. Yeah. So there's a lot to be gained by some of our tools that are out there to help you engage more and more and more. And I think one of the really cool things about all of it is the way this paper is designed. It's set up for you to be able to revisit and jump to selected sections. So even though the topics work together, subject matter can be absorbed in, one section at a time. You don't have to, like, there's some papers where it's like you have to understand one section to go on to the next. I think this one has the ability for you to jump around. And I think one of the things that's valuable about the way that Notebook LM is set up is that you can utilize those tools to help you do that. And Annetta says we learn in different ways, just like the animal, and then it opens up a new approach to it. Yeah, so I think that's some of the things that you might appreciate about using that particular tool. All right, so we're already well, we did start a little late because of my mess up, but let's see what we hope you get from reading it. Deeper understanding of how the constructional approach is different from or expands upon our latest knowledge of animal training. And again, maybe a little bit more knowledge about some of these constructional principles if you are new to it or haven't really explored it yet. And I think also how the constructional principles may be applied to get to your desired goals or solve those long-standing challenges. And of course, how it enhances animal welfare and well-being. And again, a resource that you can potentially share with others to explain these concepts. I think sometimes it can be challenging to explain things, and hopefully this helps do that for you. And again, maybe a reliable reference to help you with, developing protocols or educational materials, or if you're writing something yourself, or if you're developing policy. And again, maybe an inspiration for you to begin or continue incorporating constructional principles in your training programs. And then what do we hope happens next? Well, we hope this paper is the, sort of a beginning or continuing part of the journey. We know it's not the end point. If you're just starting, we hope this will help you. If you're already into it, we hope it helps continue everything. We know there's a greater need for empirical studies, and we really hope that our colleagues will continue to, enhance this, published results of what they're doing, test hypotheses, continue to document what you're doing with the constructional approach, and, build momentum for what's next, deeper collaboration, more shared data, more published science. And so what is that future? We hope that you'll share this article with your colleagues. We hope maybe it helps some discussions at your facility about potentially replacing some of the things that are maybe outdated now. And maybe it's a stepping stone for learning and practicing and refining our constructional programs. We hope it's an opportunity to cite something new, maybe support some policy updates, and maybe you can use it in your teaching and mentoring, and maybe help build the future of animal training. And of course, we would love for you to connect with us and share your experiences if you can. Let's say, and we get this is fabulous. Playing devil's advocate and help with ways for engaging with the skeptics. Yeah, I mean, we hope it provides some, a well-written resource in helping you to have those conversations, and maybe in a helpful way. And again, like I said, I think that engagement with Notebook LM is really helpful in kind of how to have those conversations. At least I found it useful in doing that. So yeah, I hope that was helpful in giving you some history and background as to, how this all came about for us, what kind of article it is, what we hope it will accomplish. And again, we don't see it as the end point. We certainly hope that others will be contributing to building upon this, and that it'll be helpful moving forward for other folks as well. To just kind of recap it, in this live stream, we explored the background behind our newly published article, The Constructional Approach to Zoo Animal Training, Enhancing Welfare Through Emerging Evidence-Based Behavioral Science. The paper was written in response to a call for best practices in zoo animal welfare. We thought an ideal opportunity to share a scientifically grounded alternative to hierarchical and exposure therapy-based models that often fail to address complex behavior challenges. This publication serves as, it is a review, but it's also a condensed, we hope, seminal resource meant to guide practice, foster meaningful dialogue, and support professional development. Key topics include all the things nonlinear contingency analysis, functional reinforcement, degrees of freedom, genuine choice, hopefully presented in accessible language with real-world examples. It blends history, science, empirical studies, and case studies. We hope it bridges the gap between practical experience and behavioral principles in a way that benefits trainers, caregivers, researchers, and policy developers alike. We highlighted how Constructional Approach is already solving long-standing behavior challenges and how it offers tools to improve welfare in measurable, sustainable ways. We're looking forward. We discussed the need for more empirical studies, greater collaboration, and broader dissemination of these methods. Whether you're just beginning or already integrating constructional principles into your work, this paper is a tool for learning, sharing, and leading change. And if you haven't read it already, we invite you to read it, reflect, cite, and join us in shaping the future of animal care, training, and welfare. So a couple of resources. In my program, we do have that series of courses on the constructional approach if you want some more video examples. And one of those in that course is Understanding the Impact of Superimposition, that talks about that great case study with the tiger that's mentioned in the paper, but you can see all the video examples that Annetta did. And then, of course, I have one on providing genuine choice that has lots of video examples that is also in that presentation. And then recently we had a presentation by Kelly Summers about using an emu, and that case study is mentioned in the paper. And then, again, here is how to access that paper. If you don't have it yet, you can scan that QR code and that should take you straight to it. And if you want even more on all this, there is an event coming up on December 6th with the folks at Endicott College, and some of the important people that were mentioned in the paper are going to be there. And we will also be doing some animal examples on a panel about constructional exposure therapy. And so one of the case studies I mentioned, I'm going to be talking about in that as well. If you liked this presentation, here is the citation. And again, in our animal training program at animaltrainingfundamentals.com, you can get some credentials for taking our courses. You can also wear us on your attire or your coffee cup or your water bottle, or get a little sticker for your computer. And a lot of our stuff features information about the constructional approach. And as always, you can join us at animaltrainingfundamentals.com. We have a monthly option, 20% savings if you join for the annual, and our best deal is our facility option with up to 200 sub-accounts. If you need something a little bit more in less whistles and bells, but maybe more affordable, we also have a YouTube membership. All right, there we go. And I see we got some comments here. So let's see. Yeah, Annetta says, let's hear about your experiences on the constructional approach applied in your community. So Annetta is eager to hear how it's been working out for you. And Alex says another way to use the audio overview is to use the prompt text box to steer the conversation on the paper. For example, I asked it to focus on how I can apply this paper to my work as a dog trainer. Oh, I like that. I definitely need to play around with it more. So like I said, Alex, you were my inspiration to get out of my little tiny world and be more adventurous with Notebook LM. Can't wait. So exciting that they are doing this again, the Endicott College. I think you can attend it virtually. Yeah, so the Endicott College thing is only virtual on Saturday, and my understanding is they are not recording it, so you do want to register and attend live if you can. So last year's was amazing. Like I said, I sat in my car and was driving down the coast of California and listened. And what I really liked about it, especially with the panel with Joe, Paul, and Jesus, is that they shared a lot of more personal stories, and so you really kind of got to know them as individuals and their backgrounds. And so even though, I know a lot of people are there to learn about the science and application, you also got a little bit more background about the people behind the science. So that was kind of fun. I don't know what's on deck this time in terms of what they plan to do with those three, but you can see from the flyer that they're going to talk about some, again, how this information is applied across learners in different environments, which I think is really cool. So, but yeah, it was really, really interesting and entertaining in many different ways last time. So hopefully you'll be able to join, and it's free, the really great learning opportunities. So that's really generous of them, I think. All right. Thank you all for being so patient with me on getting started. I figured out my mistake. Like I said, I made 2 events, which made it say, no, thank you. You can't go live. I fixed that, but we're all good. All right. Last year was so great. I'm looking forward to another one. The relationship dynamic with Joe, Jesus, and Paul was fun to watch. Yeah, for sure. It's, you know, we're really lucky to have these opportunities to engage with these folks, you know, because, you know, 2 of them are retired. So they're really, you know, I think just doing this because they enjoy it so much. And so that's very generous of them. So, so we should take advantage of it while we can, for sure. All right, y'all. Thank you so much for being here, and I should be here next week. So hopefully, I'll get my my setup right next time, and we'll start on time. But I appreciate y'all joining me, and look forward to hearing your feedback on the paper, and seeing you next time.